This is Anagalactic on to December 9th. We're getting closer and closer to Christmas. Over here, you'll see a YouTube channel, which I have freeze-framed. December 5th, it has gotten 4 million views. So I consider that to be significant. Good day to you. This is Anagalactic on a Tuesday, December 9th. We're getting very close to Christmas now. Hope you're having a good season. Over here, you'll see something entitled the Negatron. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Negatron. Paul Adrien Maurice Dirac, the immensely famous quantum mechanist, actually, when you do make a discovery that overturns part of science. He said that it will be discovered, but there's something wrong with it.
I only tell you that,
That sounds a bit confusing even to me.
Having it described to me what Paul discovered by Veritasium, who is not making anything up. Veritasium is simply reporting the facts. And there he is. That is Dr. Dirac, is well worth seeing. And there he is, just so you may recognize him, but that is Dr. Derek Muller, who is, in essence, Veritasium, who 5 days ago came out with a video. This won't take long. I just wanted you to see that the title of this is Something Weird Happens When E equals negative mc squared. And what you're seeing is a cloud chamber bubble track of an anti-electron, which was predicted by Paul Dirac.
A particle with negative energy. In 1905, Albert Einstein published his special theory of relativity. It was based on the simple idea that for anyone moving with constant speed, the laws of physics should be the same.
It's only 35 minutes long, but I tend to give 2 to 3 hour presentations. It's just my natural rhythm. Not so much because I like to talk that much, but because the subject matter demands it. He does cater to, of course, an entertainment-oriented audience. So it's not strictly speaking science. But he is a scientist. He's a genuine physicist, and he's worked his way up through the ranks. But he's very good. He's very good, and so I approve of him for whatever that's worth. But 1 million views a day for 4 days? 1 million views a day for 4 days. He has exactly 4 million views on this one video. My videos get
4 views.
That's
1 millionth
of what he gets. He doesn't actually offer any solutions. He's just... But Kurchai Mungal out of Canada, he's the best. He's in a class by himself. What is in this video, which is one of the most important breakthroughs in the history of mathematical physics, which, let us not forget, has hit a dead end and can no longer make any progress. There won't be any more discoveries, either in cosmology or in subatomic physics. Einstein's field equation will never be solved. Now, as you know, I solved it. That's because I'm not in the industry. I'm not a nigger. I don't have to learn calculus, although actually, I'm sorry to say this, but you actually do have to learn it. But the way I learned it has got to be the most bizarre story of how anybody ever got a grip on calculus. And Newton simply had found a strange tool, but it's excellent for what's called tolerance engineering. That is precision engineering, where you don't need to do anything right. All you have to do is get your measurement within what is called tolerance. And that is such a critical term to understand today, so that you understand the basis of technology, which, as I've been teaching you from the Holy Scriptures from around the world, technology is satanic. It's not even human. Humans participate, but that's because the angels fucked humans. That's in the book of Enoch, and Yeshua knows all about it, and so does Muhammad. Smelting of metals was taught to humans by aliens. I've given about 100 video presentations on Islam. It began with the Islam reaction to Western nigger physics. Nigger, yeah, you can use that word if you you don't want to be using it the way, for instance, people from Alabama used to use it, or people from some goddamned polluted city like Washington D.C. or New York.
That's not the right way to use any word. Then it is a swear word because those people are white racists.
And so, of course, the word has a terrible reputation. Well, that's why I use it.
You should measure its speed to be 300 million meters per second. This means that things that we ordinarily think of as fixed, like time and space, have to transform so that the speed of light is always measured to have the same value. In making this discovery, Einstein realized that space and time are not really separate dimensions at all. They're linked in a four-dimensional fabric called spacetime.
What Dr. Muller just said there is not true, but he's simply parroting what everyone in the industry says. The problem with Einstein's result is that it's 4D. And that is so simple. It's just, there has got to be some kind of conspiratorial cover-up for why all of these mathematicians and physicists just lock shoulders and say things about the universe that are so patently absurd that you have to wonder, are they still under angelic and demonic control? I say yes, because it's the only explanation. And the reason for this line of reasoning, that in order to explain government operations, you have to use the same form of logic that describes what it is. It's not rational. Of course it's not rational. Men should not be smelting metals to make coats of mail, as Enoch says. This was taught to the early humans by aliens. But the strange thing about these aliens is that they don't ride in UFOs. They're angels who have been punished and consigned to the surface of the earth. Now, you could say this as an extended metaphor, but it's so mightily extensive that it does infringe on the realm of angelic beings who do exist. Mohammed actually met one named Gabriel. So did Daniel. If you're a Christian, you might credit the ancient Jew. He's a Jew, and he actually was a Jew. No Jew today is actually a Jew. Another cover-up, and that also is due to satanic activity. So you might think, well, this poor professor who wears the dark glasses, he sure is a nutcase. Oh, I hope you do. I hope you do. If you've turned this off already, I'm overjoyed, because I'm never going to get 4 million views. I'm lucky to get 4 views, but I don't do this to get money. I'm not a nigger. I am not possessed by Satan. And that's a big difference. It's something you can't possibly credit. That's why I say it. Well, the real reason I say it is because it's true, but I don't give a fuck what your reaction is. It couldn't possibly matter to me or anybody else who's rational. So I hope you're coming around. I am trying to brainwash you on behalf of the universe so you can go free like a real American instead of a nigger. And that's all you are. And you're a Jew as well. And you're retarded. And you're a faggot. You're all 4 of those nasty words. And I will use those words about you until you fucking snap out of it. Otherwise, you're just going to keep hearing it. And there's nothing you can do about it. Okay? You're a nigger, Jew, retard, faggot. If you believe these shitheads like Veritasium. All it is an industry for Satan. You got to realize that, or you're just never going to grow up. All right, so let's hear a little bit more, just basically to keep me from talking, right? That's got to be a treat. Let's try that.
He found something peculiar. When an object loses energy by emitting photons, its mass must also decrease. And the change in the object's mass is equal to the energy of the photons emitted divided by the speed of light squared. In other words, he found that energy must be equal to mc squared. E.
Okay, that is not true. Just these lies.
Just get out there and you just accept it. Oh, yeah, I know.
E equals mc squared, first of all, is not even a rational equation. Because energy on one side, okay, that's a quantity. And on the other side is mass. That's a quantity. How do you measure mass? The number of protons is the exact definition of mass, and you can look that up in Wikipedia. Mass is measured in protons. Now, do protons vary? No, protons do not vary. I don't know how aware you are of the secret fact that only the proton is a uniform particle. That is, it's a counting particle. That if you lined up 1,000 protons to count them, they're all exactly the same. That is not true of an electron, which can have an infinite number of energy states. And Paul Dirac helped prove that the energy state of an electron can also be negative, which is a negative quantity, which drove Pauli out of his mind. It drove Heisenberg out of his mind. At least 2 out of the 5 physicists that I'm attempting to recall to mind dropped out of physics entirely because of Dirac's discovery. He made a prediction of the positron, which he termed the anti-electron, which is correct. But a man named Carl Anderson in 1932 discovered the positron, which he named the positron because now you have 2 different states for the electron. And that's state-of-the-art particle physics, that the electron has 2 completely different states. Actually, they're linear opposite states, which should alert you that that's incorrect. However, it's not incorrect by a pure fluke of nature, an absolute coincidence. And this is one of the most amazing stories that you will never hear, except I'm going to tell you, the direct relationship between Einstein's discovery of general relativity, really any form of relativity, including special relativity, which came 10 years before the general version. In 1905 came special, and in 1915 came general, neither one of which got Einstein the rather ludicrous Nobel Prize. What Einstein got the Nobel Prize for was discovery of the quantum of energy, which Max Planck did not discover, although he got a Nobel Prize for what he did not discover and did not even want to discover. Another queer story. You could say that Planck discovered the quantum of energy. That's incorrect. Although they're closely related. He did discover the quantum, but he denied it and never accepted that that's what he discovered. But then Einstein discovered the quantum of light, which is pure energy. In the photoelectric effect, he got his Nobel Prize for that. He also did not get a Nobel Prize for E equals mc squared, which we're going to cover quite quickly right now. So you'll see the relationship between that and the Dirac equation, which ended science. It actually drove all the quantum mechanists of Dirac's day. They simply lost their minds, and nobody's ever recovered. Richard Feynman probably said it best when he just said the most anti-scientific, jackassed, retarded thing that any scientist has ever said. He said the quantum mechanism will never be understood. Well, he should have just slit his wrists, because he's a fucking liar. Well, of course he's a fucking liar. He killed 20,000 innocent Japanese people. That was directly due to Richard Feynman. He's a murderer. And, of course, a nigger. So, E equals mc squared is retarded. Why? Can you should, if you've listened to my videos, be able to state instantly why that's a lie. Why is E equals mc squared bullshit? It's because it's c squared. Squared? Squared. Never use subscripts or superscripts. That's a satanic ruse to drive you out of your fucking mind. So don't ever use superscripts or subscripts. That means you'll have to drop out of the university and work at McDonald's. It's better than being a butt boy for Satan, which is all you'll ever be if you're a mathematician, and you know it, mathematicians. So energy is equal to mass. That's what that says. The c squared, you just scratch it out. And E equals m is, of course, correct. That has been proved. But you see, the mathematicians want a conversion factor so it's mathematically balanced. Because E equals m is only balanced on the undefined constant of relationship because mass is not energy. The equals sign says that mass is energy. And that, of course, is a superpositional conundrum. Is mass energy or not? No man has ever been able to answer that. Einstein came closest because he invented a coefficient between mass and energy, which you can see there. Energy equals mass if you use the same units for mass and energy, but if you use the same units for two different manifestations of reality, you have to have the coefficient between the two quantities, which in this case requires, at least in Einstein's stupid point of view, that if you multiply mass by c squared, then that's energy. Which you can see, pardon the pun on C. Oh my God, English is such a stupid language, a satanic language. Because C, the letter, is the same as the verb to see. That's like point. Let's get to the point. I must have made that pun 1,000 times if I've made it once. You always notice it because we're all juvenile delinquents at heart. And so we will remember, as boys, we'll remember anything that will derail a logical sequence because we're juvenile fucking delinquents, sorry. But so energy is basically equal to mass if you have this peculiar term c squared. Well, Einstein didn't know what he was doing when he added that because that makes no sense whatsoever. Why not? You should be able to answer this question. Why is E equals mc squared a complete fabrication of the human imagination? Why is it possible to say that and prove it, which I had better do before you lose patience? It's because there's no such thing as a square. You realize that the reason why we have so many squared terms, that's an actual square. It's a geometric square. And I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty and fine-toothing. You know perfectly well that that's exactly what Euclidean geometry is. It's made of squares, which means that the universe is made of cubes. And that's why there's so many cubic equations. That is with a superscript 3 for the quantity, which means essentially, it is thought, that same number multiplied by itself, which if it's a 1, you can drop the superscript 1, because you're not multiplying it by itself any number of times. But if you jump from 1 to 2, you are now multiplying the number by itself. What does that mean? You were lied to in school about multiplication. Absolutely is incorrectly taught at all levels. And your physicists are guilty of this too. Your mathematicians are satanically possessed. Euclid was taught by fallen angels. There's no such thing as a straight line. You have to realize that, or you'll never see the truth in physics. So the c squared is an artificial, actually ridiculous term, because what it means is, if you have c, you can draw it as a line ray. That's called a speed. No, it's not. Why is it called the speed of light? Shouldn't it be called the velocity of light? First of all, I hope you know the difference. I had to look it up, so if you don't be ashamed. Is there a difference between speed and velocity? Yes, there is a very important algebraic difference between speed and velocity. Actually, a geometric difference. Speed simply refers to distance over time, but velocity is much, much more complicated. Velocity is much more complicated than speed. But which one is the right term for light? It's speed, because speed does not have a direction, and neither does light. Well, all right, I've done enough ranting here against the foundations of mathematics, humanity, physics, and the United States government, and the American population. So let's get some quality time in here and figure out what E equals mc squared means, so that we can get back to the Veritasium presentation of the discovery of Paul Dirac's positron, which he did not name. He named it the anti-electron. It was Carl Anderson who called it the positron, and we're getting to the negatron in a moment, which leads us into the heart of the atom to get the actual answer, which I discovered. So beginning with E equals mc squared, we need to take that apart. I've given a couple of video presentations over this summer on the correct formulation of E equals mc squared, which is accurate enough. It depends on certain definitions which are just totally misleading, because you can't have a squared term in the universe. There's no such thing as a square. There's no such thing as a cube. And there's no such thing as space-time. That's extremely important to see directly, because the numbers that are being used are not actual numbers. So c squared means you have a speed, but you see I'm drawing a straight line. That's not a speed. That's a velocity, which is much, much more complicated, because when you have a directed quantity, you don't really know what you're talking about. That's called a Newtonian. It's a Newtonian force. Newtonian force does not exist. Einstein disproved the existence of Newtonian force. What is the definition of Newtonian force? It's force that's applied to a so-called object, such as a bullet is the perfect fucking example of something that's an object that has a velocity. Because it's going in a linear direction, there's no such thing as a linear direction. That's a derivative of physical reality. I think you realize, there's the lab cat, she is blessing the work here. She jumps off the table, the whole table rocks. She's a beautiful cat, and I could not exist without this cat right now. Since my wife died 16 years ago, I'm basically a ghoul. That's why I use such filthy language, and I talk about fallen angels. So E equals mc squared must be rewritten, because there are no squared terms in the universe. The universe doesn't know what you mean by a square. as Einstein proved, it does not know what you mean by a straight line. Now, of course, as you know, it's superpositional. I'm the only man alive who understands Paul Dirac's term, superpositional. Now, all of this fits together into a brand new picture of the universe that only I can see. I was gifted by heaven above, not with satanic metallurgy or numbers out the ass. No, I was actually shown how the universe is truly constructed, and there is a mathematics for the universe. It's just that I'm the only man alive who knows that mathematics. So the c squared, you have to understand that that is a derivative term. Now, the term derivative is a calculus term. Paul Dirac dealt exclusively with derivatives. And all physicists are dealing with derivatives. Why? They're using linear numbers. Those don't exist. The counting numbers do. How can I say that the counting numbers exist? Are they linear? You could say yes or no. But the correct answer is no, but it's superpositional. Linear numbers are numbers that exist on a line, and the counting numbers do not exist on a line. You can force them onto the line, but if you do, you quantize the line. That's Euclidean mathematics. That is called linear algebra. I want you to write that down and look it up and study the term linear algebra. Algebra, the word just means there are variables. It's actually more complicated than that. Algebra comes from the Islam people, Al-Khwarizmi, who lived centuries ago. Not meaning to compare a true culture with the shit-eating American bullshit murder culture, I don't want to compare Islam with the white racist West, because Israel is taking care of that by wiping out the brown people so that the white people can take over the oil fields. The oil fields. That's what it's all about. That's what E equals mc squared is really for. It's world domination, of course. All right, so c squared is a bullshit term because it's linear. In fact, it's a planar term. It refers to a square made of the speed of light. Well, that's insane. That actually makes no sense. Because what it means is, according to the Cartesian grid, the xy axis that parameterizes the plane, as you well know, and could explain a lot better than I could, because you're such a genius with numbers. Yeah, you know you're not. So the c squared means that the speed of light is going on the x-axis in the positive direction, and simultaneously, it's going on the y-axis in the positive direction. That doesn't mean anything because light does not do that. So why was Einstein making up things? Why did he get away with this? Why did nobody blow the whistle on him? Because if you use calculus, which was taught to humankind by Satan, calculus is the cure for linearity, for linear blindness. All of your mathematicians are so blind, they're blind and retarded. And they're satanic. They're actually dangerous. And you shouldn't be listening to people like Veritasium. Dr. Derek Muller, as he claims is his name,
Might as well go all the way.
is just a bullshit artist. All he is a disco jockey. He doesn't know what science is. You have to actually be able to think. That man cannot think. He's an entertainer, for Christ's sake. He doesn't want to teach you anything. He wants your fucking money. That's all Derek wants. And, you know, the same is true even for the good ones, of which there's only one, in my opinion. Kurt Mungle, he's the great white hope. I mean, I know he's from Canada. He's not even a real person. He's not from the United States. And you see the color of his skin. That's not white. Now, my skin is satanic white, so let's cover all the bases here. If you have seen my videos, you know that you have to take the C out, but you can't. That is the conversion factor. When this is done with calculus, it gets you atomic weaponry, so you can blow up innocent citizens in Japan. So far, only, I believe, Hiroshima and Nagasaki have been the only victims of a fission explosion, which Einstein hand-delivered from Satan to Roosevelt and Truman. That was directly from Satan's asshole. And Einstein, being a
Swiss Jew.
of course, was persuaded to defend his fucking people in Europe for some fucking reason only Einstein knows. So he handed the fission bomb right from Satan to Satan's minions on the east coast of America, and in Berkeley and in the Livermore Valley, where so much Satanism occurred. I think you realize Berkeley is a hellhole, and you should never even stop in Berkeley. Never stop in Berkeley. In fact, you shouldn't go to the east side of the bay. Oakland is damned. Now, I was raised on the other side of the dead, satanically murdered San Francisco Bay. So I grew up on the good side when there was still snow on the coast range between San Francisco and Santa Cruz, which is about 75 miles, a beautiful low mountain range called the Coast Range. When I was growing up, it was covered with snow for weeks every year. There hasn't been any snow on Skyline for over 20 years. And you can check the records. It will never snow on that ridge ever again. If that doesn't make your skin crawl, then you're probably satanically possessed. I hope you tune in for more of the geometry that gives you everything you need to get out of the traps. That's why I do science, is to help people get away from satanic control, so you can go free. I identify so much with the good forces of the universe, with heaven, with Yeshua, Muhammad, Enoch, and of course, God, that I have to be very cautious, because I'm just like you. I have roomy eyes that I need to cover up with dark glasses. I have white skin showing I'm a retarded nigger fairy. Jew. All Jews have white skin now. You know why? Natural selection. We'll be right back. Keep looking up. There's a full moon that's waning. Have a happy Christmas season. We'll be back with the secrets of the universe that no one else will ever tell you, either in religion, science, or mathematics or physics. I'm the only liberated person in America. Thank you so much. We'll be right back. The man you see in this rather dark noir photograph is Carl Anderson back in 1932, approximately, when he won a Nobel Prize for discovering Paul Dirac's positron. And it's now well known, well measured. It's an absolute match on what Paul Dirac predicted. And how did Paul Dirac do that? Well, I have some idea, but it was one of the most shocking things ever introduced into scientific circles. It traumatized most of the quantum mechanists at that time. Dirac is on record, and Veritasium records this well-known quip of Paul Dirac that Werner Heisenberg discovered quantum mechanics in 1925. That could be debated. It's kind of like saying that Newton discovered the calculus. You rather accept that, but you know there is actually more to it. The simultaneous discovery of scientific facts, the simultaneities are improbabilistic. In fact, even in this Veritasium presentation, just released 4 days ago, there is the anecdote that 3 men simultaneously discovered a certain kind of solution to the wave mechanics problem of the day. One of them got most of the credit. The second man got partial credit, and it's named after those 2 men with a dash between their names. And the third man named Fock, unfortunately, F-O-C-K, and Veritasium makes a joke out of it, very subtle and well done. It just shows the scientist Fock saying, in quotes, Fock. Because he was left out, it should have had 2 dashes in all 3 men's names with a certain form of justice, which we all tend to just disregard after a while. That's too bad. No sense in crying over spilled milk. But the fact that Paul Dirac predicted the existence of the anti-electron was regarded as rather preposterous. He shocked everybody, but it wasn't because of that particularly. It was his new method of treating the wave mechanics equation, basically of Schrödinger, making it relativistic, which means what? That's covered in this wonderful video. Let's just listen to a little bit of it. The title of this is called Something Weird Happens When E equals negative mc squared. This is actually an extrapolation on Dirac's immortal work because he ended up being justified. Carl Anderson there got a Nobel Prize for justifying Paul Dirac's hyper-complex analysis. He extended the notion of complexity to where instead of using a 2x2 matrix to represent complex conjugation, he made a 4x4 matrix in order to capture in a higher complex space the existence of anti-energy, which Veritasium introduces his video by saying that really doesn't make sense. But Carl Anderson discovered the anti-electron, now well named the positron, but Carl would have liked to have renamed the electron in order to match the word form positron. He wanted the electron to be renamed the negatron. And in a certain context, that is appropriate if you're treating the electron as a dualistic particle, which produces the fine structure constant, so it is known to exist. It exists in the electronic shell systems of atoms. The electron, not only is it not anywhere on the shell at once because of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, but it also splits at the fine structure, which is a gap in one of the, I believe it's called a Lyman line, but it's one of the visible manifestations of the shell structure of the atom at the innermost shell, where it's most easily measured, obviously. Carl really did a good job there, anti-energy. But at my small institute, we just discovered the anti-graviton simply from having watched the Veritasium video. I'm on a discovery explosion. It's gone into hyperbolic acceleration. And I am just now capable of addressing pretty much anything in physics where there are no answers. You'll never have a robot that can do that. So my teacher, Sir Roger Penrose, is justified in saying that artificial intelligence is what these scientists are trying to implant into machines, because their intelligence is artificial. The machines is not. So I hope you enjoy this introduction to our presentation, which I will continue tomorrow. It's a little after 2 a.m. here, and I've made 6 videos today already, because as I said, this is a hyperbolic explosion of discoveries. In the next video, I'll show you again, as I have over the past 3 years many, many times, in 1,300 videos so far, in 3.5 years, a new geometry that explains everything. So far, this hasn't been detected. As Veritasium shows in his video, it's easy to be overlooked. Fock was overlooked, and he's shown saying fuck, which shows that he's dismayed. A true scientist is not dismayed. If you're doing this to get recognition, you're doing it for the wrong reason. I am not doing it to get recognition. Science demands that I share a discovery. If I'm wrong, tough titty said the kitty when the milk ran dry. I hope you stay tuned for the unified field solution, where I will show that gravity is perpendicular to light speed. We'll be right back. Thank you for tuning in.